watching The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Troubled telecom service provider Vodafone Idea has been extended yet another lifeline by the government. The government has agreed to pick up more stake in the debt-laden telecom operator in lieu of spectrum auction dues. The government has now agreed to convert 36,950 crore rupees of what Vodafone Idea owed it in terms of spectrum dues into equity. The shares will be issued at a face value of 10 rupees apiece, which is, by the way, more than the last closing price of the share in the stock market at 6.8 rupees. Today, however, the share has surged by 10%. Following the conversion of equity shares, the government's share in the beleaguered company will increase from 22.6% to nearly 49%, making the government the single largest shareholder. However, it's being maintained that the promoters will continue to have operational control of the company. In return, Vodafone Idea gets a 2-year breather on spectrum payments and an 18% reduction in its debt burden. But does this bailout signal a fresh start for Vodafone Idea, or is it a temporary lifeline? Or is it, as one brokerage firm described it this morning, a band-aid? Well, the company still faces AGR dues of 16,500 crores annually starting from 2026 March, a burden its current EBITDA of 10,000 to 11,000 crores per year can barely support. Apart from this, the promoter holdings would now have shrunk from close to 39% to about 25.5%, as will the minority shareholders, who will take a hit due to the equity dilution. So the big question really we're asking today is twofold. One, can the government's second lifeline finally save Vodafone Idea? And two, beyond a point, is this an idea worth saving? To speak more on this, I'm joined by Sanjay Kapoor, former CEO Bharti Airtel and former chairman of Micromax. I'm speaking today with Dr. Satya N. Gupta, ex-principal advisor at TRAI. We'll also be speaking with Prashant Singhal, markets leader and telecommunication leader at EY India. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much. Let me start the conversation with Mr. Sanjay Kapoor. Mr. Kapoor, let's start with the last question first. Is this an idea worth saving?
Let me try and peel the onion a bit for you. Absolutely, if you look at this move, it is not about the numbers. It is not about government's 49 or, the promoters coming down below 26. It is about keeping VIL a going concern, because apparently that's the right thing to do for such a large market where there should be at least an oligopoly to serve the market and the customers so that they have adequate choices. Now, the question for various shareholders that has emerged out of this, first and foremost, is this enough for VIL? The answer, like you said, what about the AGR dues and the current accruals from EBITDA that VIL gets are not going to be sufficient to fund that outflow that will come up from 26 March. But the fact is, they need to survive today to be relevant tomorrow. And that happens because with this respite that they get, their outflows required in the immediate future are less. And therefore, they can borrow more money from the market to pump into their capex, which is required to be competitive in the marketplace. So from their perspective, for now, to fund their capex and be competitive, I think it's the right thing, and that's what they were hoping for. But this doesn't have ramifications only for them. It has ramifications for Indus Towers, for example, which was probably discounted on its multiples because of the uncertainty around VIL. But I think with this, a little more certainty coming in, their discounting should go down. Plus, if the capex really gets spent, then the number of tenancies and the number of towers will go up. So really, Indus Tower becomes better off than what they were yesterday. Now, the last stakeholder, which is the two competitors, Airtel and Jio, I think for them also this move is positive rather than negative. Simple reason, a weak VIL will always resort to price cutting, but a stronger VIL will compete in the market with spending more capex to become competitive and offer better value and experience to the customers. So I think it's good for them also that they are not treading down the price discounting route. So I think for now, and now considering what's happening globally, the third and the fourth largest players anywhere in the world, even in high ARPU markets, have stretched balance sheets because the technology and the longevity of the technology has shrunk and the capital cycles have increased. Under those circumstances, the third and the fourth operator anywhere in the world is anyway under stress. So Voda Idea is not an exception, and being a distant third or fourth player puts you to a big disadvantage. So are they out of the woods? Answer is no.
Okay, so one quick follow-up, and the use of one word in your response that I found interesting, Mr. Kapoor, is apparently. And you said that in the context of apparently in a market this large, you shouldn't have a duopoly. Let's dwell on that, because that's, at the end of the day, the numbers may be what it is. We can ask that why has this been converted to equity at 10 rupees a share, etc. All of those questions can come. The core issue is that, do you want India to have just two large players? And what are your thoughts on that?
So I think the most important stakeholder in telecommunications today is the customer, because this service is no more about making calls and surfing through internet. It is about living your lives around the services and the peripheries that get created by the telecom service providers and the whole ecosystem of security, storage, applications, content, etc., etc. Now, if that is a reality, then for the customer, there can be nothing better than having choices, right? Otherwise, the service providers tend to become more greedy. They tend to become lesser worried about the grade of service. And this has been seen in many parts of the world. I'm not saying this will apply to the Indian scenario, but there is a precedence on this in other parts of the world. So I think from a straight consumer perspective and government perspective, to see that government is doing the right thing, it is better to have at least an oligopoly in a country this size. But economics don't get governed by what you want. And today the economics, because of the shortening technology life cycle and with increased capital cycles for this business, because you're pumping in money all the time, it has become very difficult for smaller balance sheets to compete with the bigger ones.
Yeah. Dr. Satya Gupta, let me come to you on this point. There are two ways of looking at it. One is, did Vodafone Idea deserve this cash infusion? And will it be enough? Let me start with the will it be enough part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Tamanna ji. Actually, when you talk of will it be enough, actually there is a saying, you can never have enough of two things. One is called money and other is called bandwidth. So it is not enough. At least, and I'll tell you why it is not enough, because the government on their part have done the money part of it. Actually, they have to basically do more than that. It's a public-private partnership where money is just one resource you bring to the table. Then you have to bring other skills also, other expertise also, or other kinds also. Like what I'm unable to understand, why government is also not coming to the board. Though they say we are not in the business of running the business, but at the board level, first, they deserve it now with 49%. Actually, anything beyond 26%, you have to have a seat on the board for the accountability purpose, for seeing where your money is going, and also helping the investee company to make best use of it so that they succeed. So this is one point which have to be considered by the government. They have to get on the board. If they find they don't have the enough skill, they can hire, they can outsource, or they can nominate some independent director from the best brains of the country. Actually, a lot of people have lived telecom, like few in your own panel now, and those kind of expertise from the country have to be brought on the board as the nominee of the government if they don't want to nominate themselves. But they have a right, they have an obligation, they have accountability to do that. So that means money alone is not enough, of course.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. As far as AGR thing is there, those dues are also staring at the face of it. But with this positivity, with this, you can say, cleaning of the balance sheet, reduction in the debt, you can now use other tools of getting the money in the company. One of the tools which everyone else has used is called InvIT, Infrastructure Investment Trust mode. You should go for that now. actually, and you can get a lot of money actually in the company without losing the control. The beauty of InvIT is there. Our other telcos have made use of this tool and other infrastructure. NHAI have made use of this tool. Power Grid, Starlight Grid have made use of all over the world. InvIT, it is a SEBI approved scheme, so you can get more money. In addition, in any case, with this cleaning up of the balance sheet, you will get your that debt what you have been trying for last 2 years, that 25,000 crore of rupees you can get, and you can even attract ECB there, actually a cheaper kind of that what I will call. Now we have gift that Gujarat information financial township actually. So you go there, register your company.
So there are options. There are options is the point being made. Prashant Singhal, let me ask you about that. Why should anyone invest in Vodafone right now with the government owning 49%? The people who are running it, but then they've been trying to run it and move it out of this situation for a while. What is the case for investment in Vodafone, either from a large investor or from a shareholder perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing is that from a sector standpoint, and that obviously applies to Vodafone, that till such time you get your regulatory levies realistic. I mean, as we know, India is today still the most taxed sector when it comes to AGR, when it comes to GST. And the entire GST, I think Sanjay made that point, that with the amount of capital inflow which is required in the sector, there's a lot of GST credit which comes in, and that also doesn't get utilized. So if the government is going to look at, and I think there were some press articles on relooking at SUC or abolishing SUC, at least applying it to the auctions before the current auctions. Now, if some of those SOPs or some of those corrections are done, then it makes sense for anybody and everybody in the sector to boom, and that'll kind of bring down 4 to 5% or maybe 6% of the direct revenue cost down, which would add back to EBITDA, and that would then help companies to do much better, including Vodafone. And I think the conversion which is there, I think that's a great step. Of course, the government is making clear that they are very keen on operating Vodafone and taking their investment up to 49%. But unless the operating matrices and the regulatory levies are rationalized, I don't think, I mean, India is doing very well on telecom, but can do far better and actually become an innovation hub, which we used to be a few years ago.
The point is that even if all of that happens, can in this picture Vodafone survive? And I just want to talk a bit about the market share of Vodafone and how it has dropped, the revenue market share. In financial year 2018, Vodafone commanded a 38% market share. And if you look at it on a bar graph, it's been a consistent drop, coming down to about 14% in the third quarter of FY25. So, Prashant, completely get your point on levies and tough conditions for the sector as a whole. But as things stand, the consumer seems to be moving away in larger numbers from Vodafone month on month. That doesn't seem to be changing, no matter how much equity infusion is put.
Yeah, so there are 2 or 3 parts to it, right? I mean, if you look at the subscriber numbers in Vodafone, it's still about 200 million subscribers. There are very few companies globally who will be sitting on 200 million subscribers. I think where India needs to move is upping the ARPU, and 2 of the 3 operators have been able to drive the growth of ARPU. And I think the third one will also drive that with more and more network expansion and capex, which is happening. And I think Vodafone has made various public announcements that they are investing now in the network, and they've also launched 5G in a few cities in India. So with the network expansion, with the greater usage of data, and with the ARPU growing, the numbers can and should improve. 200 million subscriber base is not small from any standards, from any market standards. I mean, there are countries which are cumulatively 200 million subscribers. I mean, while in India it's 18%, but it's a fairly large number, right? 200 million.
Yeah. Having said that, and yes, on a wide base, of course, You can look at it either 18% or 200 million. My question, Prashant, is does Vodafone survive? Where does it go from here? Some people are talking today about the government share, government stake going up as high as 80%, because by the time the next bill is due, Vodafone in its current state doesn't seem like it's going to be able to pay it.
I think we need to see how the market evolves, how the ARPUs grow. I think all the three players have survived and have grown. I think we had same questions a few years ago about some other players. We also had the same question about BSNL a few years ago. BSNL has turned around and became profitable. I think telecom as a business, is, and I mean, there are very, very few companies globally which have shut down. They may merge and they may be in market consolidation, but shutting down of companies is very rare. And as I said, the scale and size of companies is fairly large. It's not a small company. I think to Sanjay's point, India should not have a duopoly. It's not there in a lot of markets across the world. There are at least 3 or 4 operators in the world. The gap may be wide between number 1, number 2, and number 3, or number 1, number 2, and number 3. So that's really the market dynamics. But all of them are profitable and all of them survive in the market.
Okay. So Prashant, you seem to be a little more optimistic. If the question was in a yes or no, can Vodafone Idea survive? You seem to be saying yes, why not? We've seen turnaround stories in the past as well. I wonder if Sanjay Kapoor has the same view.
So Tamanna, the views will differ. I have a different view because I have run telecom companies, and I am now associated with many across the globe. Telecom business, unfortunately or fortunately, is a mark-to-market business. It is about how you do versus your competitors that sets you apart. That you can survive in a large market in isolation, remain profitable, but be a distant third or fourth player is nobody's choice. Why would somebody want to be a part of that unless and until the values are really at throwaway prices? So given where Idea is versus Airtel and versus Jio in the market, those two have distanced themselves from Idea. The only way now that if Idea was to come back, or Voda Idea was to come back and compete with them, and can we imagine a situation where they'll be closer to each other on market share, maybe 33, something like that? Is it possible? I don't see Jio and Airtel relenting at all to anybody, given their size, given their brand strengths, given their full capitalization, their ability to borrow money, attract equity investments. I don't think they are going to shed any market share to anybody. So given that reality that VIL faces, I think VIL, with their constraints right now, at least in the near foreseeable future, will be an also-ran operator. They'll be a distant third at best. I don't see them competing head-on with Idea and with Airtel and Jio and Airtel relenting anything to the third operator.
Yeah, so one concept or one perspective of this is that the other two are not going to release any market share, relent any market share. I want to ask this question also from the point of view of the government's decision, and let me come to you on this, Dr. Gupta. At the end of the day, taxpayers' money has been utilized to bail out a company that has not been able to compete in the fair market for whatever reason. Is that a good idea? And yes, on the other side, you have to weigh that, all right, you don't want to duopoly in something as important as telecom, as strategically important as telecom. But does it make sense?
Yes, thank you, Tamanna ji. It makes total sense actually, and I'm for yes also when you ask about survival or not. Yes, and they have no option actually, and that is where your question of this government money, taxpayers' money, shareholders, stakeholders, everything is now watching, and they have put them on their toes. So they have to survive, and they can, like Mr. Sanjay mentioned, they can, but they will be third. Yes, let them be third. If there are 3 operators, like, there is a rule of 3 book by Dr. Jagdish Seth, the marketing guru. He is telling any market, three big players can survive. Of course, their percentage can be different. And 200 million is not a small number. If they can retain 200 numbers and make them premium customer, actually, you should know that though we have 950 million broadband user in the country, 450 million are still unconnected as far as data is concerned. That is the market for them. Rural is the market for them. Broadband homes. Do you know that out of 30 crore homes in the country, only 4 crore homes have broadband, which have to be actually delivered, and the existing players are unable to deliver that. They have touched just 4 crore. So that is the market. There is a strategy in such case, because they are, yes, they are put in the corner and they are all kind of thing and they have no option to fail. So they have to use what is called blue ocean strategy. Blue ocean strategy is where the competitors have not reached. The competitors have delivered. Go there, because now we are backing of the government also. Government will back you up. Then there is a ESG thing. There is a funding, alternate funding you can do. You can actually do some kind of operational efficiency. You also have to tighten your belt. Yes. You can use the BT example. 2000, BT was also in the same stage. And then they did what is called functional separation through open reach. So they just hived off their assets in a separate company, converted it to a company like trust, what I was talking, raise the fund through that trust actually, and then also they can in fact make use of the fiber of the government. BPNL, and take it on lease on a revenue share basis. They can also 5G. They can gear up for 5G by going to the vendors and use the Airtel, what Sanjay had done in his time, outsourcing. They tell the vendor, okay, bring the equipment, I have the spectrum, I have the tower, I have the license, and let's share what they call the minutes factory. Now they have to call it bandwidth.
My question is that are all these strategies not available to the current management of Vodafone Idea? I mean, these are some great ideas. Why have they not been implemented? I mean, today we're talking about a core question. Is it worth the government's while to save this from the coffers of the treasury? That is what is happening. Prashant Singhal, let me come to you on that. Is Vodafone Idea worth saving from a national perspective?
Before that, I like to mention, because I did not answer this. Actually, it is worth it, because ultimately government is getting it at a very low price, at par price actually. Of course, they are taking more.
They're paying more than the share price in the market right now.
Yeah, but it is less than par, Tamanna ji, and it will come at that level only. But main thing is, it is solving a lot of problem, not only Vodafone, because it's a lot of economic, like if it does not survive, what happens to the network, what happens to the staff, what happens to the consumer?
I mean, that's private enterprise. Okay, now just a quick word from Prashant on this core point. I got your view, Dr. Gupta. Let's hear Prashant's view.
Yeah, no, my own view is that there's too much at stake for a third operator not to be there in India, and for the entire ecosystem. And it's not just about it's not just about the company, it's about the entire ecosystem, which is the employees, the vendors, what happens to the infrastructure which has been created, which is today India is still on a shared infrastructure. And Sanjay did talk about re-rating of Indus's stock with Vodafone survival. Now what happens to if Vodafone doesn't survive, then what happens to all the infrastructure companies? And there's a lot of investment which is going into digital infrastructure, which is going into macro towers. And what happens to that with the single tenancies which would be there? So if we just add up the direct, indirect investments as well as employment and the entire ecosystem, I think it's very important for the country to have 3 or 4 operators. The market shares may be current market shares, and if the regulatory levies are rationalized, then I think the profitability of the companies certainly go up, which would then enable them to invest more and more towards the network. Obviously, the larger of the two are investing a lot in the network, but then the other ones can also do the investment. And turnaround is not difficult. I mean, we've seen BSNL turning around. I think it was there in the past few. BSNL has had a turnaround.
Yes. So turnaround can be possible. It's worth saving, says Prashant. Sanjay Kapoor, I need to wrap the show, but your take on this, I think this is the key question of the whole conversation. So your take before we close the conversation.
Look, there are two views on this. If you were to look at a completely economical view, to say a view of economics, to say, does it make any economical sense for the government to be investing behind this? And if government was an independent investor, my answer is no. It makes no sense. Why should somebody take such a high risk investment? But I think government is wearing a much bigger hat than only an investor's hat. They want the industry to have proper competition, consumers to have a proper choice. They're also worried about the other paraphernalia that exists along with this, which is the passive infrastructure, the supplier ecosystem, so that it doesn't get exploited. And therefore, the government is trying its level best to maintain an oligopoly, which is the right structure for a country our size. You cannot look at it only from an economic perspective. Economic perspective, answer is probably easier, but I think government is wearing a bigger hat here. So they'll try. They'll still try more.
Of course.
My counter.
Yeah, for the government, it's important to have a very crucial service available to more and more Indians at better rates. Does it leverage that now? And to the point that Dr. Gupta was making, should there be a government nominee on the board? And I'm sure, and in a more powerful position to actually see what's happening with the money that is now going to Vodafone Idea. Well, this is a story that is yet to unfold. We've seen so many twists and turns of the journey of Vodafone in India, now in its latest avatar as Vodafone Idea. We'll definitely be following this one. Thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of The Big Question today, and to our viewers as well. Thank you so much for tuning in.